Hey you guys, what's up? So today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at this Nomad Factory Drum Tools plugin. This is basically Nomad's Factory's solution to a drum mixing tool. This is basically designed to kind of be like a preset starting area to where you can get a fantastic and finished drum sound. And it comes with a bunch of different features. First of all, you have bypass, which basically bypasses everything. And you have different sections from kick 1, kick 2, snare 1, snare 2, toms 1, 2, hi-hat, overhead, and drum set. So basically what this is this is their way of being like, these are like channel strips, or I guess signal chains, designed and perfectly set up for that specific instrument. Now, one thing I do notice is that whenever you activate any single one of them, even with everything bypassed, you do get some type of processing. You get an EQ curve and maybe even some saturation or compression, which is kind of cool. So it basically kind of puts things into perspective of how you're going to want it to be in the long run. So what I want to do is I'm going to bypass my bass and my guitars, or I'm going to mute them. I'm going to play for you. This is a song I wrote specifically for this little example. I'm going to play for you the drums. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass. You see when that light is, that blue light turns gray, that's when they're bypassed. So we're going to have it. I'm going to just play it, and I'm going to just bypass them all at the same time. So here we go. Now, hopefully you can really hear that. That is a huge difference, like night and day difference. And another thing too is, even though it sounds like it's getting a lot louder, we're actually quieter. Our peak levels are hitting at least 1.5 dB quieter than what they were beforehand. So let's start off with this. So basically, the way this is designed is it's basically a channel strip. You have a opto gain, which you can turn on and off. You have the first thing that I should really talk about is the calibration. You can calibrate the internal headroom of how the distortion module right here, and I'm assuming probably the gain and the DLA2A compressor, which is basically the same compressor that is in their newest compressor plugin. Now you also have a bunch of presets which you can switch through. You have a utility section, which lets you open the manual and check for updates and stuff. You have an output volume and a bypass. Now, let's go through the left and right. Like I said before, you have a bypass, which bypasses everything, and then you have your own section where it tells you what type of processing you're going to be doing. And this is really important because what this does is this predefines what type of sound you're going to be trying to get. Now, let me bring up the kick, and the only plugin I have going on any of these drums is just one instance of Drum Tools. So we see here we have it on kick. So if we solo just the kick, I can show you guys exactly how it sounds and what it's doing. So a great thing is that this is also very, very obvious. As you could hear when I switched through all the little sections, it completely changed the sound. It didn't change the settings that I have, but it changed the sounds because everything is predefined for that instrument. I really like this kick one because it has that beefy bottom end, but that nice like top end sizzle that I like, that bite, which you can see right here in the EQ, which we're going to get to right now. So basically what we have is we have an opto input gain, which basically can feed into the output, which has a clipper, soft or hard. You also, when you want to, you can, when you turn this on, you can also activate the DLA2A compressor, which has from compression or limiting. You also have this little switch right here, which is mono or stereo processing. Since these are stems that I'm using, this is stereo processing that I'm going to be doing, even though it's a mono kick drum. We also have under here saturation, which you can flip on and off. And this is tube style and solid state style. Let me play this for you right now, and I'll show you what they sound like. So as you hear from that, it's pretty much like it says. That's tube sounding, that's solid state sounding. I like to use them both in there because this one gives a little bit of more mid-range, a little more bottom end, while this one kind of chops those transients, and it kind of helps tame the peaks without actually making it sound squashed. Now next we have the modeling, which basically models different types of saturation from triode, pentode tubes, 15 IPS or inches per second tape, 30 inches per second tape, B transistor 2, A transistor 1, A transistor 2, and then a valve tube. This can be turned on and off by the modeling, and its headroom and the way that it saturates is set by the calibration. So if you have this all the way down, you're getting massive distortion. All the way up, you're getting minimal distortion. Let me show you that right now. And then you have a little mix knob, which basically lets you control the mix. I believe this is the master mix knob. Now you also have the high and low pass filters, which you can just flip on and switch. This is from 20 hertz all the way to 2000 kilohertz. And the low pass is from 22K all the way to 2K. You just double click to reset anything. You can also, when you activate the opto gain, it has the DLA2A. You can turn it to compressor limiter. I don't really like to use it because I find it's a little bit too crushy. It's really great if you want to do a parallel bus, but for me, it's just not doing its thing. Next, we have a gate expander, which has relaxed, moderate, aggressive, E fast, E relaxed, E gentle. When I think of E, I think it's trying to do the SSL E channel style thing. Even though it doesn't really state it, E usually means SSL E channel. All I have to do again with this switch is turn it on and off. I'm not using it on this kick because I like the way it's sustaining. I don't think it really needs it. I kind of like that. Now punch, right here where it says punchy, this is the compressor. You have from natural, vintage, modern, pumper, impact, punchy, and dirty. And let me just make sure I remember the 34.50, and let's crank this up. Now, I actually really like punchy, and I'm using it kind of gently, but I really like how these are very aggressive and very, very obvious. You can really hear what's going on. Now, a cool thing about this too is you're also able to really kind of get completely different sounds, and you can just dial them in slowly and kind of bring them in as you want. These are actually very usable, and I'm really digging it. If I bypass it, let me show you the kick. So I also believe, this is my own opinion, that what this is doing is this is before it hits the modeling, before it hits the saturation, because now that it's controlling those transients and it's shaping it a specific way, I'm only hearing the distortion in a different way, where if I turn it off, I need to calibrate and reset everything on how I'm doing it. So next we have EQs. Now, each section basically has their own chosen EQ parameters. Now this one, since it's the kick, it's subs, weight, body, low end, trick. Now this is really cool if you want to add just those frequencies. It's not something that where you can choose your own specific frequencies. It's more like predefined, but this is cool. And if I go to something like the snare, you see that it changes. You have different options. So this is all predefined to what they believe is most necessary. Same thing with the high end, which is a high end bell. Punch, bite, and snap. I am using bite a little bit, and let me show you what that sounds like. I think just a little bit is all that's needed. Now, you also have a reverb. Now, this is really cool because you have Berlin, Paris, Los Angeles, Manhattan, Tokyo, London. These are their convulsion reverbs that they have, and these are basically spaces that they've designed. And what we can do is we can even just crank this and see what this sounds like. Now, me personally, I kind of like Los Angeles a lot. I think it's because it sounds really cool for a drum room sound. So if I was going to do this, I would probably send it to a parallel send, have it doing that, and just crush it. So that would be it on the kick. And if we want, we can bypass it right here with the bypass. You can see exactly how this kick originally sounded. Cool. So That's how it sounds on the kick. Next, let's go to the snare, because I think the snare is probably the most obvious change. The kick, yeah, it has more punch, it has more bite, and it's more like aggressive. But check out what happens to the snare when I bypass it. And we're not going to use the actual Studio One bypass. We're going to actually hit the normal bypass that it has. So this is the snare that we actually start out with. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. It actually sounds really good. But one thing that I was having is I was having to kind of crank the volume up quite a bit in the mix to make it stand out. So what I needed to do is I needed to kind of crush it without actually making it sound bad. So let's move to the verse and let's see what we can get. Cool. And that's actually the sound that I actually ended up with. So if I look at my master fader right now and I hit play, I'm hitting minus 11.6 dB after I'm hitting everything, all the limiting and stuff like that. Let's bypass this. I'm hitting about a dB and a half louder. So this is actually quieter with a higher RMS with the plugin on, and it has a lot more snap and a lot more bite. And since, like I did say, I did kind of write this song specifically for this, all I did was kind of just DI a couple guitar tracks and, like write a couple riffs and then loop them around. So if we listen to this and listen to the snare when I bypass it, and I'm just going to hit the bypass button, listen to what it sounds like. So as you can hear from that, that really brings that snare to life. In fact, I can bring it down in the mix now. Now it's kind of sounding like it's popping up too much, even though it is quieter. I am using the compressor right here. It is a very aggressive compressor, and I do find it to be kind of like grabby, and that's kind of why I liked it and why I wanted to use it. Now, let's go on to something kind of cool, which is the tom. So I do have a tom set up right here, and let's grab that. Now, the tom sounded really good on its own, and in fact, it didn't really need much work. It's just I wanted to have a little bit more body, a little bit more low end. So let's bypass it real quick. So as you can hear it, the tom sounds fine. It has impact and it sounds like a tom, but it doesn't really have any vibe or any really power to it. So let's see what happens when we switch between the toms. And that's where it is. I am using the relaxed gate on this one because it kind of had a lot of sustain after you really process it heavily. As you see, I'm kind of cranking a little bit of distortion. I am gaining it up just a little bit just so I can kind of hit it hard with 30 IPS. I'm using the impact compression. I'm using a little bit of thump, a little bit of stick. And then I'm using, just a gate. So I'm not really even low or high passing anything, but I'm getting a much more heavy sound. So if I unsolo this and we play it, and we're gonna have this bypass, and I'm gonna bring it in, we can hear what's going on. And as you can hear from that, it really did kind of bring it out. It made it, it's subtle because this is not something I wanted to be super crazy like the snare, which I am going to bring the snare down in the actual mix. I do think it needs to go down about a dB. But as you can hear from that, it does really completely change the sound. And I was actually really impressed. I'm a guitar player, so all I did is record the guitar and the bass in MIDI for the drums, but it made decent sounding drums sound even better. So that's pretty much it for the pros. I mean, this thing does its job and it does it really, really well. I was extremely impressed with it. The only other thing I really used it on was the overheads, and all I did is use the reverb and kind of crush it, just to make it kind of vibe a little bit more. Now, let's talk about the cons, or the things that I would like to see. I don't see any phase reversal. I would really like to see just a little button somewhere, maybe right here or something, or maybe just right here where I could invert the polarity of the phase of the channel just in case it's not in phase. That would mean I wouldn't need to put another plugin on there just for that. And I would also genuinely like it if it had just a clean setting where I could use all of the settings that they have, all the presets, without any of the pre-processing that it has. Because honestly, I would really like to use the distortion they have, the saturation and the modeling, and even the reverb on just some actual channels. Like this would be a great thing just to have a global clean, like a clean, like drum set and then clean, where you have all the options and you can completely shape it and create your own thing. I think that would make this a 10 out of 10 kind of thing. This is overall a great plugin. As you can hear it, I mean, I made it very obvious this time that it is not subtle. This thing completely changes the way that things sound. I would maybe like to add a subharmonic generator, maybe in case I ever get a kick drum that has no low end at all. That would be dope. But besides those three key things, a phase inversion button, a clean channel or a clean preset, so it's just clean, so I can completely control it and do whatever I want. And then a subharmonic generator for frequencies, like if I get a kick drum with no low frequencies. If they had those things, this thing would be perfect. This thing is great, and it's really low latency. I think it's only 0.3 milliseconds, at least that's what it says on Studio One when I'm using it, and I believe. But this is overall a really good plugin. I would highly recommend trying it out. Demo it, see if you like it. Please leave a like, subscribe, feel free to comment, and I will see you guys next week.